Welcome to the Mile High Champions League podcast. I am your host, The Commission. With me, as always, is the very relatable and also inflatable Big Nolski. How are you, sir?
You know, just relatable and inflatable as always.
All right, now that Noel's nice and inflated, let's get started. Let's start with the MVT, as we always do, most valuable team, and I'm going to humbly say it is me. It was not me going into that. Hooray for me. Not me going into Monday night's game with Jared Goff, but it was Molly at 219.7. I ultimately pulled it off 227.1 to 193.9. So it was not a bad week. It's first week, so there's nothing to be too excited about or too disappointed about. Maybe excited for Kenfield for the MVP of the week, Tyreek Hill. This dude went absolutely bananas. He scored Kenfield a total of 73 points. He only had 2 rushes for 4 yards, but had 7 receptions, 169, 2 TDs, and then special points touchdown. He returned a kickoff for a touchdown, which was absolutely also bonkers. 73 points for this guy. So congratulations, Senior Kenfield. Not only do you get the MVP and the MVP award, monetary award, but you're also getting a trophy I'm creating this year for the highest scoring player of all time. We've had it in the past to be folks like Michael Vick, believe it or not, Tom Brady. We've had other folks take this, but Tyreek Hill at 73 points has actually exceeded some people's total score of the week. So congratulations, Mr. Kenfield, for not just the MVP, but for getting the highest scoring player of all time. Going on to the Survivor Challenge, we have so far 1 elimination. You know what that is, Noel?
I do not.
It's you.
Hooray!
You actually, unfortunately, scored the lowest amount of points last week at 133.5. That was the lowest point total for the week, which is weird because 133.5 in past years has been a pretty good week. I think the addition of a punter certainly helps, plus the changing to the wide receiver scoring. I'm guessing average scores this year are probably going to be more in the 160 range. So I'm sorry, Noel. I'm sorry you're eliminated, but certainly you're not going to be the last.
I don't even know what it is, so I'm not too worried.
Just for those of you who are unfamiliar with what I'm talking about, it is the Survivor Challenge is the award we're going to hand out this year, which has a fun little trophy that you get online, which gives you star points for helping you get into Harvard. If you put that on your application, I'm sure you'll get in. But more importantly, whomever is left over at the end of bowl week after all 12 weeks is one team, they get $50. If it's more than one, they split the prize accordingly. So it's kind of a fun little mini game I've built into our fantasy league. So I'm sorry, Noel, you are eliminated, but the remaining 11 teams still have a chance here. So let's go on to the notable injuries of the week, and there was quite a few.
Yep.
Quite a few. I'm looking on ESPN's site here, and I'm going to just go down by the list in which they have ordered, so there's no specific order here. Number 1 is Delaney Walker, tight end, Tennessee Titans. I'm familiar with him because he was my tight end. He did. And unfortunately, I saw the play that took him out. At first, I was like, I didn't see what exactly happened. So I was like, oh, maybe he just hurt himself out for 4 to 6 weeks. He'll be back. No, the guy rolled over his ankle. It bent the wrong direction. Like, oh, it looked bad. So Delaney Walker's out for the season now. So I have him on my IR, but I don't maybe I can use him in the playoffs if I make it, but very likely not. Next, we have Marcus Mariota. He was taken out, which I think is the saddest part is, do you know who the backup is now going in, Noel?
Oh, crap. I used to know. I forgot, though.
His name is Yo Gabba Gabbert.
That's right.
Gabbert. Oh, why is he still in the NFL?
Because he did an okay job when he came in like off the bench for Arizona like a year or 2 ago, and people were like, "Oh, maybe he's a serviceable backup," and he's not.
Yeah, he's just not good there. Moving down the list here, we have Doug Baldwin, wide receiver, Seattle Seahawks. He's their number 1 wide receiver. He suffered a sprained MCL in his right knee, an injury he suffered earlier on in the season, earlier in the training camp, I should say. At that time, he missed a month. He did go back into the game. He was hurt in the first quarter, went out in the third. So I would expect Doug Baldwin to be out in Seattle for a couple weeks here.
I was going to say the injury in camp was actually to his other leg. So he now has 2 bad knees.
Oh, that sucks. That sucks. So maybe Brandon Marshall, if he's still available, might be a pretty good waiver wire pickup because he's old, but he's still got great hands.
And he can shove people.
And he can. And he can be a bitch when he's on the Broncos. Moving down the list, Deshaun Jackson, Mr. Speedster, had an amazing catch from Fitzmagic there. He scored a ton of points this week. However, he took a big hit and suffered a concussion, so we have no idea when he's going to be back. Usually that's at least a week, if not 2. I would expect a 2 to 4 week time frame for Deshaun Jackson to come back. Greg Olsen, tight end, Carolina Panthers. He's one of my favorite tight ends, favorite players in the game. Suffered a foot injury and was seen on crutches. I would expect he's out for the rest of the season with that. What do you think, Noel?
Yes, and not to make light of anything, but I did see an excellent tweet about this week where, someone was basically saying, you guys aren't specifying what leg it is, if it's his right, left, or middle, referencing the famous rap tape that he made with some friends while at University of Miami where he said, "I'm Greg, let me tell you about my third leg." So that's
wow.
It was good.
Well, good for him and his third leg. Bad for him and his actual foot, though. Mm-hmm. Next, moving on down south, we have Leonard Fournette running Jacksonville Jaguars. Left in the first half, right ankle injury, but Doug, the jabroni Maroney, said he's not sure about Fournette's injury yet, so there's no timetable for his return. TJ Yeldon likely will get the rock there in Jacksonville, so might be a valuable pickup. Moving on down still, we have the last big one is Jeremy Hill, running back, New England Patriots. Yep. Jeremy Hill of old Cincinnati fame used to be a pretty good tandem duo with Giovanni Bernard, but now has since moved to Darth Belichick's squad. He suffered a right knee injury, which, as we were just talking about, right knee injuries can be a month, could be a season. We don't know yet. They haven't said yet, and Belichick is notorious for being very circumspect about that. However, I just clicked on his name, and he's on IR. So That's pretty much he's done. So forget exactly what I just said in the last 2 sentences. Darth Belichick does still be very circumspect about his injured players. However, Jeremy Hill's not coming back. So maybe looking for the backup running back in New England as a potential flex play there. So anything else you want to add on the injuries, Noel, or should we go to the recaps?
Let's go to the recaps.
Let's duke it. All right. First game, Noel, it is the Legend of Lincoln versus the Kings in the North.
And this is one of those games, we talked about in the intro that, you look at Courtney's score here and you're like, man, it'd be hard for her to lose. Okay, I see. And it's just, I think we're going to see a lot of games where you got to be scoring 160s, 180s with this new scoring system to win. Of course, it didn't help that Matt Stafford threw 4 picks. And here's a fun fact. No quarterback since 2009 has thrown 4 picks in a game more often than Matthew Stafford. I also don't know if you saw the news, Mike, but it's basically pretty much been speculated that the Jets kind of knew what plays were coming before they were even the ball snapped every time.
I heard that.
Because, old Jim Bob Cooter, who they kept around after cleaning house, is that predictable. So not good there. Kareem Hunt, a surprising 9 points. I didn't watch any of that game. I didn't really see any highlights. I saw it was Tariq Hill's show. But 16 carries, 49 yards, and they won. So kind of makes you wonder what was going on there. Keenan Allen, 38 points. It's a lot of points considering that he just had 8 grabs, 108 yards, and a touchdown. But as you said, Mike, that's receivers now. Ifart had a respectable game for a tight end with 11, but you'd like to see more out of that. Pretty good game. I don't say it's pretty good, but decent game. Christian McCaffrey, 23 points. Peyton Barber, 13. Fitzmagic was had the hot hand in that game, so he got all the points. And then from there, one of the best performances on her roster this week was Britton Colquitt, punter of the Browns, scoring 20 points. Her kicker, however, got 0 points on that shit show that I was ribbing one of my friends who's a Cardinals fan is saying that his team is now the Bills of the Southwest. So fun with that. And then Vikings defense, great game, 24 points, where they could have got more sacks probably of Jimmy Garoppolo, but they got 3 picks, including a one return for a touchdown, and we're just generally disruptive. So good game, but she definitely would have liked more out of quarterback, running back, and probably the IFART. And then to Ben, Ben was, Ben had it where you want to have it. It's your top of your roster, scored a lot of points, 36 points for Aaron Rodgers, who came back after we all thought he was dead in the first half and had a great game, 36 points. As I said, Alvin Kamara, an insane game, 59 points. DeAndre Hopkins, you'd like to see more, but Deshaun Watson had not a great game, so 23 points for him. 19 points for Jordan Reed. He's still alive. He's not injured yet, Mike, so that's good. LaShawn McCoy, Buffalo got beaten the shit out of, so 5 points for him, bad. Marvin Jones, 14 points, not bad. His punter had a pretty big game, but he's a punter. Same with his kicker. But his defense had 20. So, but that's where you make your money in this league is the top of your roster, the best spots score the most points. So Ben had that this week, as where Courtney did not. So Ben gets the W. And Mike, now we're on to your recap of Mark Doomgivers and Kenyon Drake and my feelings.
America. Drake, yeah. So this was a pretty good game by both of these guys overall, although I think you could easily say that without Tyreek Hill's monster game, that this would have been Josh's week to win. There were a couple down spots on Josh's roster, to be sure, but I think, he had a good week overall. Kenfield, though, just had a better week. He had down spots as well, but not as many. Let's start with the quarterbacks. Cam Newton for Kenfield, and Roethlisberger for Josh. Roethlisberger was on the struggle bus hard this week. I watched that. It was so bad. He fumbled the ball twice. He threw, I believe it was 3 interceptions. 3 interceptions and 2 fumbles by Roethlisberger alone. So he lost 10 points in just his own Big Ben-ness stupidity. So not great for him. Cam Newton, on the other hand, rushed 13 times, 58 yards, 1 touchdown. That's to be expected because he's awesome. Threw the ball 17 times for 161. That is not as awesome. However, he did put up a decent 26.4 points. And the running back space, we had Kenfield's Alex Collins running against Kenyon Drake, the namesake for Josh's team. Alex Collins, being Baltimore's #1 running back, you'd think, oh, he's probably pretty good. Nope, 8 points. That sucks for him. Did not do too well, and 6 of those points came on a touchdown. So really, Alex Collins had a garbage week. You expect a lot better from that. Drake had a better week. He got some decent yardage in the air, 3 receptions, 18 yards. Okay production on the ground, 14 rushes for 48 yards for a total of 15 points. Moving on to the #1 wide receiver, they both had a great week. A.J. Green snagged 92 yards on 6 receptions and a touchdown, 28 points. Jarvis Landry for Josh seems to have found his groove in Cleveland, and Tyrod, or he wants to be called something else now.
Tyrod. Yeah.
Right. Tyrod. T-Man.
Apparently, everyone's heard it pronounced differently, and he just listens to it, so no one knows.
I'm just going to call him Tyrod because that's what everyone in the world calls him. So 7, 106. The weird thing about this, he was targeted 15 times, but only caught the ball 7 times. So it's pretty remarkable that he got 31 points. Going on to tight ends, you can see why you pay up for Gronk. He got him 38 points. In fact, the #1 scorer on Josh's team this week. 7 receptions, 123 yards, and 1 beautiful touchdown. Kenfield, on the other hand, had Trey Burton. You heard of him before, Noel?
Yes. Trey Burton is the tight end that during the draft we're all like, what the fuck? So he tossed the touchdown to Nick Foles in the Super Bowl.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and for some reason Chicago went out and paid him big money to come to the Bears when he was like the 3rd string tight end on the Eagles. So yeah, he's Philly special fame. Okay,
well, there you go. I forgot about that guy. So good for him. He got 4 points, by the way, so bad for him. In the 2 flex spots, Kenfield started Devonta Freeman and Tyreek Hill, who, by the way, this is one that wasn't in that article. Devonta Freeman was injured. He got a knee injury Likely not going to play on Sunday. It's very, very questionable. Even if he does play, he's probably going to be a little hobbled. So we'll see what Kenfield's able to do in the preview of this week. But Devonta Freeman had a pretty muted game anyways. 6 rushes, 36 yards, 3 receptions, 14 yards in the air. His flex, though, Tyreek Hill is the one who stole the show. As we're talking about 73 points there. Derrick Henry for Josh, not a great week. 10 rushes, 26 yards, and 1 reception for 5. Not great. Not a great week for him. 7 total points. And then finally, Brandon Cooks in the slot there. 1 reception for 6 yards. Nope. I keep mixing these up. Jeez, I got to drink more. 1 rush for 6 yards, 5 receptions for 87 yards, 23 points. That's pretty good. They both had decent production by their kickers and punters. It's kind of fun to see how that's going to play out this season. And then pretty good production by both of their defenses. The Jaguars for Kenfield at 19.5 and the Broncos for Josh at 17. So good win for Kenfield. He's tied for first in the Pacific League, which is where the action is at. Between Galloping Gonorrhea's, Kenfield, and Ben, they all have 1 win. The only one that doesn't have a win in the Pacific League is Tittletown Warriors. So, right, I mean, it's only been 1 week. Pacific Conference is where it's at. Everyone's 1-1 except for Noel. Mountain Conference is not where it's at. Everyone is 0-1 except for me. And the Atlantic Conference is perfectly even. Molly and Vanessa, 1-1. Space Force and Canyon Drake, 0-1. So, moving on to the next game, Noel, take it away. It is me versus the Space Force.
Space Force. So this was a good game, obviously, by both squads here. I mean, when the loser scores 193.9 points and still gets, beat by a decent margin, Mike, your team scored 227.1. That's a good week for both teams, even if it comes in a loss for Space Force. Mike, your quarterback, having watched the game, would have thought he had more points than that, but 22.6, nothing to shake a stick at. Melvin Gordon had a huge game, huge 46. Michael Thomas, even bigger game, 59 points, 16 receptions, 180 yards, receiving with 1 touchdown, and was targeted 17 times. So that's super, super, super efficient there. Delaney Walker was having a great game before he got hurt in that game that took, I think, the entire fucking day because of weather. Devontae Adams had basically did nothing in the first half and then a big second half, 28 points. Golden Taint, again, would not have thought he got that many points, but 7 grabs, 79 yards and a touchdown. That'll do it, 28. Mike, your punter, also both your punters had very good games. Andy Lee with 12 for you, 12 for Marquette King, the $4 man for the Space Force there. Your kicker had an okay game, 6. Edged out Prater, who had 5 for Space Force. And both of your defenses, yours did kind of mediocre, Mike. Patriots 11.5 to the Browns defense got 27.5 points for Space Force. The Browns.
They looked good. I watched some of that game, and it was kind of rainy at times, so it was hard to throw the ball, and it was slippery, but they actually looked good. And Big Ben looked just I'm sad.
Myles Garrett, he is a freak of nature when it comes to just size and speed. And then they've got some other guys that are pretty good up front in that front 8. And then they've actually got some decent people in the secondary. That rookie they got out of, I think, Ohio State is doing pretty well. So, yeah, the Browns, that was good. And now the Space Force, Drew Brees, excellent game, 44.4 points. Jordan Howard, really good game. Despite, if you all watched it, kind of a mistake towards the end, 26 points for him. 36 points for Odell Beckham Jr., who's fresh off of his holdout and nabbing lots of passes for lots of yards. Kyle Rudolph was very, very, very quiet. He got 9 points, but 6 of that came off of a touchdown. I think the announcers in that game, Courtney was probably watching it too, were going, where's Kyle Rudolph? So, yeah, quiet game for him. Relatively quiet game for Stephon Diggs, even with 18 points. Allen Robinson, showed some flashes, but the Bears just went away in the second half. 16 points. Yeah, and as I said, from there, 12 for Marquette King, 5 for Prater, 27.5 for the Browns, but not enough, Mike, to overcome your just 227-point brilliant showing. So congratulations, Michael, and Nick, keep forcing that space or spacing that force, however it is.
Good. I don't know. What would their motto be?
This is a fucking joke. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, why? Why are we here? Anyways, let's go to the next game: the Galloping Gonorrheas versus the Littleton Spartans. Grant came out and did a big showing in his first Mile High Champions League game here. Walloped arguably one of, if not the best player in Mile High Champions League history in his very first game. Congratulations to Grant for that. Good game by both overall. 198.9 for Grant, 190.3 for Brandon there, but it's just comes down to those last couple points. Let's see how we got them. So in the quarterback position, Brandon is enjoying, even though I was giving him shit on text message, Andrew Luck seems to be back in good form. He had 319 yards, 2 TDs, 1 interception, and 1 measly rush of 7 yards. Not too bad. Gave him 30.8 points. Deshaun Watson for Grant did not have a great game. 176 yards, 1 TD, 1 interception, although 8 rushes for 40 yards is pretty darn good. But I think he, at 17 for 34, needs to up that completion percentage, or just do what Andrew Luck did, 39 for 53, and just throw the ball more. Even if you have a low completion percentage, if you just throw the ball more, you'll eventually complete the ball more. Anyways, let's go on to the running backs. 2 great starting running backs here. Todd Gurley just dominated. I was watching that game. He did really well. I mean, this dude is a beast. Todd Gurley, week in, week out, I expect to do very well. 41 points for Grant this week. 3 receptions, 39 yards for a touchdown. 20 rushes, 108 yards. It's pretty damn good. Over 5 yards a rush. Think about that. You could basically just rely entirely on Todd Gurley for their offense, which they almost did. David Johnson for Brandon had a pretty good week. 5 receptions, 30 yards. That's why you get him in a PPR league. On the ground, though, less productive. 9 rushes for 37 yards and a touchdown. 24 points for him. Both wide receivers for them scored 48 points. It looks like Brandon was out to a great lead after Thursday night's showing with Julio Jones jumping out 48 points to 0. But then Mike Evans responded in Obi-Wan Kenobi Fitzpatrick form and scored 1 touchdown, 7 receptions, 147 yards. He caught every target that was thrown at him. That dude, not a sleeper because everyone knows who Mike Evans is, but gets overlooked often in fantasy football. So he had a great week, 48 points for both of those guys. In the tight end position, both of them sucked. Jimmy Graham, 3 points. That was really not – he's basically past his prime. I don't think he's going to do too much going forward, even though he's on the Green Bay Packers. He might get a couple yards here and there. But for as far as I can think back, Noel, I don't think Aaron Rodgers really uses his tight ends that much in the passing game. I mean, he does, but not like Jimmy Garoppolo and Greg Kittle this week, or let's think Jared Cook and David Carr. I mean, these are the most notable and notorious Gronkowski and Tom Brady. Obviously, they're very in sync with each other. So we'll see what happens to Jimmy Graham long term. This week, he disappointed at 3 points. Greg Olsen, I think, would have scored more had he not gone out. 2 receptions, 33 yards, 8 points. In the flex positions, Brand had Demaryius Thomas and Carlos Hyde, each scoring 24 points and 19, respectively. So they didn't each score that. That's not how you say English words, but I'm going to keep trying. Demaryius Thomas had 6 receptions for 63 yards and a touchdown, giving him 24. Carlos Hyde had a kind of mediocre 22 attempts, 62 yards, which is, if you do the math, 2.8 yards to carry. Very un-Carlos Hydean of him. But at least he got a touchdown and had 1 reception for 3 yards. So 19 points for him. Respectable. But you think you should get more from a guy like Carlos Hyde. On Brandon's side, he had Royce Freeman, which I think was a bold call because with our O-line and Vance Joseph kind of being a dumb head coach, I think that was an interesting play. Got him points, 14 points. That's nothing to shake a stick at. 15 rushes, 71 yards. We'll see, though, with how good Philip Lindsay looked, if Freeman's going to have a notable job going forward. And the other flex position, Brandon started Ty Hilton, or as he likes to be called, T.Y. Hilton. 5 receptions, 46 yards, and a touchdown, giving him 20 points. Both punters had a decent week, 5 and 7 points for Grant and Brandon, respectively. Kicker for Brandon, Greg the Leg, 17 points. Dude's on fire. He's the #1 kicker, through week 1. So, woo. Justin Tucker, the famous operatic singer, He's 4th overall with 12 points. And then both defenses did very well. The Ravens absolutely dominated Buffalo 47-3. 2 interceptions, 6 sacks. So 27.5 points for Grant. And then the Texans did fairly well against New England. Interception, 2 fumble recoveries, 2 sacks. 21.5 points for Brandon. So not a bad week, Brandon, overall. I'd still think he's a team to fear. Congratulations, Grant, on your first win in the Mile High Champions League. And let's move on to 5-second chug versus the other Larson, the Parker Rams.
And I'd like to thank Matthew Larson here for, after subjecting us all last season to a avatar for his team that was a ram-looking creature that looked to be possibly committing sexually violent acts. So thanks for changing that to a plush toy. Now, Larson, we appreciate that.
My eyes, thank you too. I actually reported that crime. I think that ram's in jail now.
Hopefully. I almost said something that was. I'm just going to move on. So this was a very, very good game for Molly, and not a bad score for Matthew Larson here, since we've got 2 of them now. That's going to be confusing. But what the key to this week and Molly's victory here is consistency, as where her team had it, as where Matt Larson's team had massive amounts of inconsistency. So Tom Brady got 29.2 points for Molly. Good. Not great, but you'll take that from your quarterback every single time and then some. Phillip Rivers had himself a great game, 40.8 points. And then on to Dion Lewis, who just had some big runs down the stretch for the Titans. He had 33 points for Molly. Joey Mixon, who is looking like the back that people thought he was going to be coming out of Oklahoma, 40 points for him. And now is where we get into the value of consistency versus inconsistency. 33 points for Antonio Brown versus 0 for the injured Doug Baldwin. 14 points for Zach Ertz, tight end, versus 8 for Austin Seferian-Jenkins for Jacksonville. And then Dalvin Cook, not a great game, but 23 points is pretty good, and he's going to be just killer going down the stretch. So 23 for him versus 3 for Amari Cooper, who Gruden seemed to think they got it back on track, so maybe not so much there. Kenny Stills, big game, 43 points. And now to the, we're back with a lot of points here. James Conner, 57 points, who I'm pretty sure the Steelers were trying to really rub it in Le'Veon Bell's face that we don't need you, so we're just going to run the shit out of this guy. 31 carries for 135 yards and 2 touchdowns. But he's still not as good as Le'Veon Bell. And then on to the kickers. We got 15 points from the other Colquitt, so big points for Colquitt this week. Versus 3 for Kevin Huber. And then 9 points out of Bill Buttlicker for the Larson's team versus 7 for Mason Crosby. So those are both pretty good. Defense, though, 22.5 points. The Steelers, they still were playing the Cleveland Browns, who they've got a shaky offensive line, let up 7 sacks, and they also blocked a kick which would have actually sealed the game as opposed to a tie. Which, by the way, means that Cleveland's winless streak is over by getting a tie. So there's that. Versus 2 points for the Saints defense, who got torched by noted Harvard man Ryan Fitzpatrick last week. So big good win for Molly here. Lots of areas for improvement on Larson's team, but I expect that he'll get that righted because 2 of his players that had very low scores are hurt. So, yeah, from there, let's move on to the next game, which is... Take it away, Mike.
It's you versus Vanessa. Buttlicker, our prices have never been lower.
What?
For those of you who don't know what Nolan and I are shouting about, it's The Office. Just search The
William
Office.
F. Buttlicker.
Buttlicker. You will not be disappointed. It's about managing on a more smaller kind of micro level. What do you call that, Noel?
Micromanaging.
Microgemin? Okay, let's move on. So this was the game we're talking about. Noel, unfortunately, was defeated by Vanessa, 133.5 to 193.8. Pretty good week overall, minus some I'd say, three glaring spots on your team, Noel, where it's just like, what the hell happened? Vanessa's team had just a very consistent showing, minus their punter, which, since we're still trying to figure out what the hell is going on with the punter game, we don't really know. You figure with how badly Buffalo did that the punter would have been different.
Apparently they have two punters, because I did see that, like, there was another why would you have two punters on your team, Kenfield? I mean, I'm sorry.
It's the same reason why you have two kickers. I mean, two defenses. I mean, why would anybody do that? Or three tight ends, Jeremy?
Who knows?
I don't know. I think that actually just bit Vanny. It didn't affect her game, obviously, but that just sucks that you grabbed a punter that was on the team. Maybe if you look at his picture, you can clearly tell he's in Seattle Seahawks gear. So maybe that's a clue. But at any rate, 0 points for John Ryan for Vanny's punter. But let's look at the players that actually truly determined the game. Kirk Cousins, as he prefers to be called, which is his actual name, 28 points for you, which is very closely matched by Russell Wilson for Vanessa. Kirk, overall had a pretty good week, 20 for 36, 244, and 2 touchdowns. Minor, 4 rushes for 26 yards, 28 points. Good week overall. You'd expect Russell Wilson perhaps to scramble a little bit more, but the Broncos put the heat on him, put it on his face.
Every time he tried to scramble, they knew what he was doing.
Exactly, because it's what he does. It's what he's known for. He's a great quarterback. I mean, he's one of the more deadly, accurate quarterbacks too, but I think what makes him very, very scary is the fact that he can run. But we have Von Miller, so suck it. 2 rushes for 5 yards for him. In the air, a little bit better, 298 yards, 3 touchdowns. However, he threw 2 picks as well. On the ground, great games by both of you, Noel. I love Saquon Barkley. I think that was a great draft pick. 106 yards on 18 rushes and a TD, 2 receptions for 22 yards. English is just not me, and we're fighting tonight. It's difficult. 43 points for Saquon. That's a great rookie showing. Ezekiel Elliott, though, he's in his, 3rd year?
Yep.
He is not a rookie. Doesn't play like one. If I looked at these two, I would have said Ezekiel was the Elliott this week. God damn.
He was.
Let's just start over. Hi, I'm the commish, and we're going to be talking like idiots for a while. So Ezekiel Elliott looked more like the rookie. 15 rushes, 69 yards, and a TD. 3 receptions, 17 yards, 25 points. That's a good showing. You look at the wide receivers, though, this is where things got weird. Arizona was god-awful. They lost 24-6 to the Redskins. I don't know what the hell's going on. However, even though with that terrible score, Larry Fitzgerald, 7 for 76, 22 points. Now, you look at the New England Patriots, it won 27-20, so you figured, well, then if the lead running back in New England's hurt, they probably were throwing the rock around. Well, maybe, but it certainly wasn't going to Noel's wide receiver, Chris Hogan. He had 1 reception for 11 yards. Now, to pick on Chris Hogan a bit, he was targeted 5 times and only caught it once. I didn't see the game, so I don't know if he just had glass hands that day or if it was just bad throws, but that's not a great showing. Excuse me. The terrible time to yawn, and I think he'll be able to pick it up. And until Edelman gets back, and then we'll see, because he's pretty much Tom Brady's lover boy, so we'll see how that works out. This was another surprising point for me. Even though Chris Hogan got you 3, Travis Kelce got you 2, 1 reception on 6 targets, so 11 targets between these two, and they caught 2 balls.
Yay, balls!
That's 2 balls that's traditional. That's what everyone typically has, except for Lance Armstrong. But Travis Kelce getting 2 points is weird. I would say this is probably going to be the worst showing for him of the entire season. So 2 points for him, for Travis Kelce. Jack Doyle, on the other hand, got 17 points for Vanessa. Really good showing from him. 7 receptions, 60 yards. So pretty good. In the flex spots, Vanny just dominated. Sorry to say. No, Leonard Fournette going out. Could have done better. 9 rushes, 41 yards, 3 receptions, 14 yards for 13 points. Lamar Miller, despite the fact you absolutely hate their coach, which I agree with, 20 rushes. It seems that he has confidence in him. If you're going to put the rock in his hands 20 times, he must think he's special. 20 rushes, 98 yards, 1 reception, 11, 22 points. Adam Thielen for Vanny, though. She started 2 wide receivers, Sanders and Thielen. Emmanuel Sanders, if you saw the game, played very well. 10 receptions, 135 yards, and a touchdown. 47 points for him. Thielen is a beast in Minnesota. 6 receptions, 102 yards, 29 points. Talked about the punters. Vandy's put up a nice fat goose egg. Knowles, Sam Cock, or Coke, depending upon however you want to say it. 9 points. Robbie Gould for him scored 11. Stephen Hauschka in the pathetic Buffalo game got a grand total of 3, which, Vanessa, if you're listening, don't pick Buffalo kickers. You think, well, they're going to suck, so they're going to kick more field goals. Remember, too, they play in Buffalo. And Buffalo is basically like on another planet. It's extremely windy in that stadium, and they don't have a great time. So their other kicker used to do really well there. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. But I generally shy away from Buffalo kickers just because I just don't trust them. Something in the water up in Buffalo. Maybe it's the Niagara Falls churning up some kind of crap up there. Who knows? San Diego Chargers for you, Noel. That was just bad. They just looked terrible on the field there. They got you 2.5 points, only got 1 sack, and let 38 points get put up against them. Just not a great showing for them. Eagles D, on the other hand, pretty good showing against Atlanta. 1 interceptions, 4 sacks, and allowed only 12 points, so 21 points for Vandy. So good game for Vanessa overall. I think this is a low point for you, Noel. I think you'll obviously rebound with Chris Hogan and Travis Kelce scoring some more points there. So I would imagine you're going to do just fine. Now let's hop on over to the previews. Looking at week 2 ahead, we have quite a few fun matchups for you. But let's start with the Gonorrheas versus the Legend of Lincoln.
All right. And this game, the projection right now is a pretty close line with the galloping Gandalf Tyrondarogas or something. They are projected to win with 59.1 points to Courtney's 155.9 points. But I think, this is a lot of toss-ups here. Right now, the check goes to Patrick Mahomes over Deshaun Watson. But, Watson's had a bad week last week, and he's come back from injury. This is his second year. Tennessee's defense is not necessarily very good, so I can see that one going either way. And then Todd Gurley is getting that red check mark over Kareem Hunt. And I think that's probably the right thing, but I think Kareem Hunt will bounce back. Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, kind of a wash there because they're both going to get their targets because they're both the best wide receivers on their respective teams. Then Jimmy Graham is getting the check mark against Tyler Eifert. However, I think this one will probably flip because, Mike, you'd said earlier that Aaron Rodgers doesn't really focus on his tight ends too much, and it's kind of just the way where he throws the ball to whoever is open. It's kind of like Tom Brady in that way. Like that's why Chris Hogan can have a down week. He spreads the ball around. The last really good tight end that Aaron Rodgers used a lot was Jermichael Finley, and Jimmy Graham is very similar to him as far as like what they do well, which is stretch the field, and they're both tall guys who have some speed. But I think you're right, Mike. I think he's over the hill. So again, toss up there. And then Demaryius Thomas versus Christian McCaffrey. I was surprised by Demaryius Thomas. I think the way they're going to use him is more of a guy that catches the ball and kind of runs after the catch. So I think the red check here is right. Christian McCaffrey, Carlos Hyde going against Peyton Barber. I think that one's actually wrong. I'd give that one to Carlos Hyde. Ravens defense against Cincinnati versus the Vikings defense against the Green Bay Packers. I think both of those are quality starts. And I'm surprised the Ravens only ranked second on defense right now after they beat the living shit out of Nathan Peterman last week. So I think that's another toss-up. The operatic Justin Tucker going up against McManus. Another one there. Jesus, these could all be – they're all so close. And then I think this is where it's going to be decided. The punters. J.K. Scott, rookie out of Alabama, punting for Green Bay versus Britton Colquitt for the Cleveland Browns going against New Orleans, whose defense is not great, but the Browns' defense is worse. So, I think it's going to be a close game, but I actually kind of going to give the edge to Courtney here on the strength of punting alone. And with that, it is on to the next game.
Just laughing to myself about the fierceness of the punters going on. You never know. Sometimes punters. So right now, I think we have two players here really talented. Ben Griffiths against Josh Josephson. I don't know which one of these teams is going to win. Ben right now has a 17.8 lead in the line, and I'm a little bit skeptical that that'll actually go up just because of the fact that right now he has Ben Roethlisberger in, but he also, Josh, that is, has Roethlisberger in, but he also has Case Keenum on the bench. And Case Keenum is going up against a kind of okay, they didn't look that great Oakland defense, and they're playing them here in Denver. So, and Oakland typically doesn't do well here. So I think he might swap him. That's kind of my prognostication. He'll swap in Case Keenum, and that'll sort of balance them out. Aaron Rodgers, I'm expecting to play, but he said he hurt his left knee. I heard him on the radio today, and he said he hurt his left knee. So I'm a little skeptical. Either they're going to be ginger with him, they're not going to do long bombs, they're going to do quick passes, or they're just going to run the rock a lot and not allow him to get hit. So I would expect there kind of to be an evenness here on the quarterback, despite the fact they're giving it, which is correct in my opinion. They're saying that Aaron Rodgers would outperform Roethlisberger. I think that's right, but in general, I think it's going to be even this week. I would expect Aaron Rodgers to do a lower than average game, and whether or not he starts Roethlisberger or Keenum, Josh's quarterback to have a in-line game, which would be 25 to 30 points. So I think it'd be about average between those two. Looking at the running backs, however, of Alvin Kamara, who had a monster week last week, versus Kenyon Drake. I love me some Kenyon Drake, but I think that Alvin Kamara clearly is a force to be reckoned with in New Orleans. This dude is fast. He can catch the ball. Is just get out of his way. So I think running back position, that's going to bend there. In the wide receiver position, I think this is actually, they have the check mark going to DeAndre Hopkins. I think it actually should go to Jarvis Landry in this instance, even though Landry is Landry's going up against the worst, against the wide receiver New Orleans defense. I was actually looking at DeAndre Hopkins, who's going against the 28th best Tennessee defense. So both of these guys have the opportunity to do well. The real question mark is the questionable DeAndre Hopkins, who is limited in practice today with a foot injury. So we'll see how he does. I would actually say ESPN has this wrong. I would put the check mark in Landry's box. And I forgot that I keep saying putting stuff in the box. I'm sorry if that offends you, but I'm going to keep saying it. Box, box, box. So let's go to the tight end position where we have Gronk versus Jordan Reed. I do like Jordan Reed quite a bit. I think he's another one of those players that's overlooked frequently in fantasy. But it's Gronk. Just period, end of sentence. It's Gronk. It's going to Gronk. Sean McCoy versus Brandon Cooks in the first slot receiver position. Until Buffalo figures out what the hell they're doing, I'm not going to recommend any Buffalo player to anybody. I was just ripping on their kicker. I'm going to rip on somebody that's actually important, LaShawn McCoy. Now, this dude, Shady, even with his age, should be able to put up at least 20 points a week, but something's up in Buffalo right now. They're just not performing well. And I'm sorry to say, Noel, Nathan Peterman is not going to be their starting quarterback on Sunday. Josh Allen, #1 rookie of Buffalo, going in for football stuff.
Yeah, the guy they say that he can throw a football through a barn door if he could hit the barn door.
If he gets the right planet. So I don't even know. So we're gonna. No. I'm gonna give my. I'm gonna put the check mark in the column for Brandon Cooks. Now going on to the second flex, we have Marvin Jones Jr. against Jay Ajayi. I think Jay Ajayi did very well last week. I think that Marvin Jones Jr. could do well. He got 14 points last week, but there's too many weapons on the Detroit offense to really recommend this that Marvin Jones would outperform Jay Ajayi. I think they have it correct here. Jay Ajayi should outperform Marvin Jones. With Golden Tate and Galladay there, Marvin Jones will get a couple looks and a couple receptions, but nothing significant. On the defensive side of the ball, we have the Titans facing Houston for Ben, and we have the Broncos going against Oakland for Josh. I'm going to give this one to Josh because I like the Broncos, but that's not why I'm going with them. Even though they have the Titans, Houston is pretty good on offense versus Oakland, which rode the struggle bus pretty hard. In fact, I would say they were driving the struggle bus like when it came to offense. So I think that the Broncos should outperform Oakland. Well, I hope so because that's who they're playing. But in regards to fantasy, the Broncos should outperform the Titans in regards to this game. So I think that the Broncos will do well there. They both have kickers. and they both have punters. So I think that the line will be closer this week than it actually suggests from everything that I've said. I'm actually going to call an underdog win for Josh this week. Let's go on to the next one, the Spartans versus the Doom Givers.
Another close line here with the projections having Brandon winning by just under 6 points. And I agree with the projections. I think Brandon's got the matchups this week that'll make it happen for him. Andrew Luck against the Skins and goes up against Cam Newton against Atlanta. And Atlanta's defense is, believe it or not, is somewhat underrated. So I think they're very familiar with Cam Newton at this point. So that I think that should be a tough matchup, as where the Skins defense is just bad, especially against the pass. And I think we saw last week that assuming he doesn't get murdered, Andrew Luck is back and he's going to throw for a lot of yards because that's what that offense is going to do. On to David Johnson going up against the very, very, very stout Rams defense against Alex Collins for Kenfield, who is playing against Cincinnati. And it's not quite the same blood feud that seems to happen each time the each time the Bengals play the Steelers, but anytime the Bengals play within their division, they seem to play even more reckless. So I think Alex Collins will struggle just because they're going to be coming after him the whole game, and it's going to be very physical. Julio Jones, I think that's a low projection with 26.7. He's a beast. Going against AJ Green, who's can also be a beast, but again, that's going to be a tough game. Jared Cook, who I'm surprised lasted that long to get to Brandon, had a huge game, who appears to just have a big-time connection with Derek Carr, but the check mark right now is the Trey Burton, which I think is insane, so I'm going to give that one to Jared Cook. Royce Freeman, as you said, Mike, who knows? Lindsey had a better game, and I think that might keep happening. But Devontae Freeman, who usually Brandon has, is questionable to play. T.Y. Hilton had a good game now that Luck is back, and I think that'll keep happening. But, of course, Tyreek Hill and the Steelers have a great way of just, a player that they should really have planned for. They don't, so it could be another huge game for Tyreek Hill. Texans defense gets to square off against the flying Blaine Gabbert, so that should that gets the check mark, even though it's the Jags who are playing New England, but it's the Jaguars defense, Jags. Greg the Leg, of course, going against Arizona. And then Corey Bojerigaruz. I have no idea how to pronounce his name. That is Buffalo's starting punter because they need two for some reason with John Ryan backing him up. So, yeah, I think Brandon will win this game. I'm not sure if it'll be that close because I think there's just, Brandon's got some firepower at certain positions, like with Julio Jones and Andrew Luck. So, good luck to both teams. But, yeah, I think Brandon gets back into gets a win and will be back to respectability after this week.
Yeah, I don't respect you at all now, Brandon. So that sucks for you. So let's go on to the next one, Noel versus Lawson. I think that, by the way, I'm just joking, Brandon. Listening. If you didn't know, I tell these things called jokes frequently. And so I do that kind of stuff. Let's look at the actual. Let's get back to fantasy football here. We have Philip Rivarios versus Kirk Cousins. I keep messing up his names. It's Kurt, not Kirk. It's Kirk. Ken? It's Mr. Cousins versus Philip Rivarios. I think that he had a pretty good week last week. 40.8 points for Mr. Rivers, but I don't know if that's something you'll be able to repeat this week. Perhaps he is in Buffalo, and they do suck, so that's going to be interesting. Kirk is going up against the pretty good, average Green Bay defense here against the run, or against the pass, excuse me. So I actually think this should be reversed. I think that the check mark should go for Philip Rivers. I think he's quite frankly this pains me to say this because I don't really like him. He's a better overall quarterback than Kirk Cousins. I think that he'll actually do better in Buffalo this week than Kirk Cousins will do in Green Bay. Joe Mixon versus Saquon Barkley. I think given the love I gave Saquon earlier, even though Joe Mixon is doing very well overall, he got 40 points last week. He's going up against a very stout Baltimore run defense versus Saquon Barkley's going against Dallas's mediocre run defense. So I think that Saquon's got they got the check in the right box there. That's going to Saquon. Comes to wide receivers, you've got Amari Cooper versus Chris Hogan. It's the battle of who can suck more. Amari Cooper got 3 points last week, which matched Chris Hogan's 3 points.
Yay.
I do think both of them have explosive upside here, so I'm not going to make a call. I think both of them have good quarterbacks. I think that both of them are on the road against tough teams in divisional rival stadiums that they tend to struggle in. So I think that I think this is a toss-up. I think Amari Cooper or Chris Hogan could do well. George Kittle, son of a bitch, Larson. You stole Skittles right out from under me. It was definitely my number one waiver pick. I kind of half-heartedly expected to get him, given where I was in the waiver wire order. But I think that was probably the pickup of this week, if not Phillip Lindsay or Patrick Mahomes. All of those were great pickups. But I think the one that's really going to pay off when we look back at the entire season was George Kittle. Just watching him play, there is a special connection between him and Jimmy Garoppolo. It just seemed to really connect, and I think that they're going to do well. So I think even with that, though, they're going against a decent Detroit pass defense. Kelsey's going against a decent Pittsburgh defense, but I think that Kelsey overall is the better player. So I think that Travis Kelce's going to beat out Kittle in this one. In the flex spot, we have Fournette and Matt Breida for San Francisco, running back. Leonard Fournette, are you just going to swap him out, Noel?
I have no idea. I'm probably waiting to see what like how things are looking.
Okay. So let us just assume that Fournette plays and that Noel starts him. I think that Fournette is better than this guy I've never heard of before. Matt Breida, who's a San Francisco running back who got 11 points last week, ran the ball 11 times for 46 yards. I see. It's a platoon between him and Alfred Morris. So they're like, we need a run attack, but we need it to be extremely mediocre. Who can we hire? I've never heard of this guy, Matt Breida. Okay, hire him. Who's washed up? Alfred Morris. All right, get those two. They're going to be our run attack. So by my stupid joke there, I think that Leonard Fournette clearly has the upper hand here. I'm putting my money with Fournette, assuming that he plays and assuming that Noel starts him. For the flex spot, with Le'Veon Bell out and missing $800,000 for a game check every game, James Conner is here to run in his stead and was the number 2 running back last week, putting up 57 points. Can you say bye-bye, Le'Veon? If this dude can run the ball the way that he did consistently this year, they're not going to pay Le'Veon his money, and that dude's going to miss out on a crap ton of money. Le'Veon Bell, that is. So he is running against a very good Lamar Miller. I think Lamar Miller, obviously being more seasoned, has more consistency, but with the situation in Pittsburgh right now, and the fact that they need to come back and at home and show that they can actually beat a team since they tied the freaking Cleveland Browns last week, I think they're going to come out playing hard. And the first thing that Tomlin does to play hard, besides maybe an 80-yard bomb to Antonio Brown, is to run the rock. So I think James Conner is going to see a lot of work this week, especially since he proved that he can be Le'Veon Bell's replacement. In the defensive position, we have the Saints, which is that's a bold call considering what they did. They struggled so hard against a surprisingly good Buccaneers game last week, but I think they'll clearly bounce back this week against Cleveland, and especially since they're at home. So I think that's a good pick there against the Chargers at Buffalo. That's an even better pick, however. So I'm actually going to say that the Chargers will outperform the Saints this week, just because they're playing Buffalo, which they got a rookie quarterback in his NFL debut. Well, no, excuse me. He played last week, didn't he? So this is his first start as a NFL quarterback, but he's not ready. I mean, he's good. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm saying, oh, I can play better than he can. No, not even close. This guy is good. He deserves to be drafted in the first round. He is a good quarterback, but he is not polished to NFL level football. He will get hurt, not hurt like ouch my body, like ouch my soul. Like he's going to get rocked by the San Diego Chargers. They're going to kind of embarrass him. And then you guys each have kickers and punters not much to analyze there besides the fact that one of the guys' names is Gould, one of the guys' names is Buttlicker. So weigh that evenly as you will. One guy's name is Dixon. One guy's name is Cock. So you have Butt, Dick, and Cock here, and they are all playing football. So I think looking at all of these different things, weighing both of these side by side, I think, Noel, you have the better chance of winning this week, particularly because I think Larson has been bit by several major bugs in the last couple of years. This year's Le'Veon Bell, but then he also lost Doug Baldwin last week. Last year, if you'll recall, in the very first play of the season, David Johnson went out, which he paid $70 for, went out in the very first game of the year. So Larson is, I would say, in the grand scheme of Mile High Champions League football, Matt Larson is the second best player to ever have played the game. Brandon, I think, is the best that we've had. Larson, I think, is phenomenal. He seems to really get how to analyze football players and plays this game really well. But I always contend fantasy football is half skill and half luck. And I think the luck thing is what's hurting Larson this last week, will probably hurt him this week and hurt him last year with David Johnson. So, Noel, I would imagine that this is going to be your week to lose.
I don't want to lose.
Oh, damn it. I just took us. All right, now I've got some more whiskey in me. Let's move on to the next game, the penultimate game. Nick versus Molly. We got the Space Force versus 5 Second Chug. I haven't had that much to drink. I've had one Oktoberfest beer and like half of my whiskey, which is maybe 2 shots. So a drink and a half. I'm talking like I'm a goddamn moron. Anyways,
like a tea.
What are you, some kind of Kansas City? Moving on. Let's look
Indeed.
at the let's look at this game here. Drew Brees versus Tom Brady. These two first ballot Hall of Famers, I think, are going to do great. However, Brady's going against Jacksonville's really, really good defense. They're 5th overall defensively in Jacksonville versus Brees going against Cleveland at home, as we talked about. Cleveland's defense is nothing to shake a stick at. They're pretty good. So I'm going to actually but they're not. I think they're going to – Drew Brees is Drew Brees. So I think he's going to do very well. I think Drew Brees is going to do better than Tom Brady this week. Jordan Howard versus Dion Lewis. These two are, again, I think overlooked players in the fantasy realm. Both of them are really good. I think that as they're both facing kind of mediocre defenses, the projections are fairly even though they have Howard outperforming Dion Lewis. The thing you have to really consider with Chicago is the handcuff. Jordan Howard has Tyreek Cohen backing him up, and that dude can ball. He's like Philip Lindsay. He's so fast, and he can find the hole, and he can just hit it so hard that it did. Oh, whoa! Sexual innuendos all over the place. My bad. Sorry about that. It crawls into things. It just kind of slithers its way in there. So that's one thing you got to consider. Now, Deion Lewis does have Derrick Henry there as well, but I think that overall, this is a toss-up. I really love Jordan Howard. I really wanted to pick him up this year. I just didn't have the money in the draft. I think this is a toss-up. If I had to vote for someone, I'd say Howard, but either one of these guys I think is going to do really well this week. Antonio Brown versus Odell Beckham Jr. Again, 2 phenomenal players. Brown had an off week last week. Even though he got 33 points, that's, I think, low for Antonio Brown. Odell Beckham Jr. at 36, which I think is pretty much in line from where you should expect him to see. What's differentiating these two this week is the defensive matchup. So Antonio Brown's going against a pretty bad defense versus Odell Beckham Jr. is going against a pretty good defense. So I think this one's going to go to Brown. Kyle Randolph and Zach Ertz, 2 very good tight ends. I think that Zach Ertz, however, is better, even though Nick Foles did not look very good on Thursday night. Eventually, Carson Wentz will come back. Me hopes, because he's riding Pine on my team. But even if he doesn't, it's clear that Nick Foles trusts Zach Ertz and will throw to him. And they're playing a pretty weak Tampa Bay defense. They're 24th overall against the tight end, so I think this one's got to go for Zach Ertz too. Stephon Diggs versus Dalvin Cook. Interesting. We got 2 Minnesota players here, so I think when one does well, clearly the other one will not. However, I think Stephon Diggs had a bad week last week. Adam Thielen kind of poached a lot. And they ran their ball a lot, so he didn't get as many targets as he should. However, he's going against a very good 7th-ranked Green Bay defense. So he's got two things to worry about. He's got Kyle Rudolph going against a good pass defense and Stephon Diggs going against a good pass defense in Green Bay. I think Dalvin Cook's got to win this one. I think that he's just a better opportunity for him for upside there, because while Green Bay is good against the pass, not so good against the rush. 21st overall against the rush. So I think they're going to do fine there. You got Juju Smith-Schuster for Nick in the second flex position versus Kenny Stills. Kenny Stills blew up last week. I think in the absence of Jarvis Landry that he's going to kind of be the guy to look for there. You look at his production. He got 43 points last week, but that came on 4 receptions for 2 touchdowns. So 50% of his receptions were touchdowns. That I don't know. I don't think that's repeatable. Juju Smith-Schuster, however, was a little bit more consistent. He had 5 receptions for 119 yards. Even though he's opposite Antonio Brown, I think that he's a better complement overall to the offensive scheme versus Miami, which is kind of a shit show right now. So I think I would actually agree with ESPN's analysis here. Juju Smith-Schuster should do better. Bears versus Steelers. They have the Bears up against Seattle versus the Steelers up against KC. I think that's accurate. KC and Mahomes are something to be reckoned with. They are number 2 overall when it comes to offensive production. They might get stopped in Heinz Field in Seattle. Nope, that's not where it is. In Pittsburgh. But we'll see. The Bears are hosting Seattle, and Seattle really struggled last week. So we'll see how that turns out. I think that in this case, the Bears should outperform the Steelers. Right now, Nick is not starting a kicker. He's in a lucrative trade talk right now for goodness gracious, who are they trading for? I'm going to look that up real quick. Oh, Harrison Butlicker. Look at that. Butlicker. And he's trading away Allen Robinson for a kicker, which that's bold. That's bold, giving up a wide receiver for a kicker. But hey, I'm actually going to vote for it right now. That's not a solicitation. You should vote how your heart desires. But I think with Harrison Butlicker coming in, then kicking duel between him and Mason Crosby, it's a toss up. And then Marquette King versus Dustin Colquitt. These two are 2 great kickers or punters. So I don't know. They use their feet to hit the ball. So either kicker or punter. Looking at everything, damn, this can be a good game. But I think between Dalvin Cook and Stephon Diggs and Kyle Rudolph in Green Bay, I think that's what's going to determine this game this week. I think Dalvin Cook's going to do well, and it's going to be Molly's game to lose. So I think Molly will go 2-0. Nick will go 0-2. And let's go to the last game, mine versus Vanessa.
So this game has Vanessa beating you right now, Mike, and that is even with a punter who's not going to be doing any punting. So, but no, I think the projection line isn't too far off. I do think you're going to see some more points out of Jared Goff. They were just trying to kind of get the running game going on Monday, and I really think with all the new toys they got for Jared Goff to play with there in Los Angeles, they're going to be trying to get the ball to them. And Arizona's defense is not very good, so I think I think you get some more points than just the 22 that's projected right now. Same thing for Russell Wilson, though. It's going to be kind of the same thing, different week for him because, again, he's going up against a team that has a just tremendously gifted pass rusher, and it's the same thing for him, where the offensive line that he's playing that's in front of him is terrible. So he'll have some fun, but he's Russell Wilson, so he'll get some points. So probably around 30 or so again is probably pretty good. I don't know. I know that the Giants defense is not good, but there's something wrong with the Cowboys right now. They're down some offensive linemen, one of whom has a condition. Hopefully he can play again, or at least not be in too much pain. But they're teeing off on Ezekiel Elliott and trying to force Dak Prescott to beat them. And so far, Dak isn't really doing that. And what? Okay, this is insane. I just noticed that the check mark is for Ezekiel Elliott and not for Melvin Gordon, who catches a lot of passes. He will get a lot of touches. It'll be in Buffalo, so if the weather is bad, it's going to be a lot of running. So no, that should be Melvin Gordon. Michael Thomas for you, Mike, going against that improved Cleveland defense, but it's still Michael Thomas catching passes from Drew Brees. So assuming he's healthy, yeah, check mark to him instead of Larry Fitzgerald. Will Dissly, who I hope turns out to be good because he's fun to watch. He's big. He's hard to tackle. But right now, even though he had 33 points last week, Jack Doyle is projected to beat him with 15. But we'll see. Devontae Adams is questionable, but certainly he's one of Aaron Rodgers' favorite targets if he's back. But Minnesota's pass defense is hellacious, so that could be a fun week for us Packers fan. And Emmanuel Sanders, I think, really does have a connection with what's his face, Case Keenum. So I think it's going to be 47 points isn't going to be a random occurrence or just a one-time thing. So I think actually Emmanuel Sanders should get the check there. Golden Taint against Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen gets the check mark, of course. The Skins defense going against Andrew Luck and the Colts versus the Eagles going against Tampa Bay, who if Harvard man turns back into a pumpkin, I think the Eagles are there. But if he comes out again and just balls out, it could be a tough matchup. So that's kind of a toss-up there. Will Lutz against Cleveland, kind of a down game, but I think he'll bounce back. Hauschka, like as you said, Buffalo kickers just have a hard time. And it's in Buffalo, so against a tough defense, that could be a tough matchup. So I think Will Lutz, there's the check mark there. And of course, your punter, because he's actually playing, gets a check mark. So I think this game is going to be quite close. Mike, I actually kind of like the upside with your team. I think the big question mark is whether or not Will Dissly will damn it, will score well again, or if he'll just kind of fall back to the wayside, and because he's a rookie that no one had ever heard of. So I like both of your teams this week, but I think, Mike, you might actually pull up the upset here.
Woo! I am not upset by that assessment. Okay, well, folks, that wraps up our podcast for the week. And of course, I'm going to touch on the poll, and then we'll wrap it up. The poll this week is: how would you describe? Wow. How would you describe Dwight Schrute's customer service with William M. Buttlicker? Aggressive, hostile, difficult, or all three? And if you need help, I posted the video for you to watch for reference on our main page there. So go ahead and watch that. Go ahead and vote. And thank you so much for listening to our musings, ramblings, and incoherent English tonight. Noel, is there anything else you want to add to our podcast?
No, I think that's good. Oh, wait, other than if I would have done a shithead of the week this week, it would have been John Gruden, because after his team's loss this week, he wondered why they couldn't generate a pass rush.
It's like they're missing one of their key players.
I know.
Gosh, who? Probably future Hall of Famer Khalil Mack. Where did he go?
Oh, that's right, the Bears, where he was gone for 3 minutes.
Oh, that's right. They traded their best player on defense away. I wonder why they're not able to perform. I have to look that one up. I'll have to call John Gruden.
That's a head scratcher.
It is. That is a real head scratcher. But anyways, once we all figure out why Oakland sucks, we can tell Chucky and he can get on the ball. But let's not, because they're playing against our Broncos. Anyways, thank you again so much for your time and for listening to us. Noel, send us out.
Go Broncos!